cover some of the concepts that I cover in my text linked below if you don't have it already. I'm going to cover some chord writing, some melody writing, and the genre I'm going to work on this time is going to be future bass. This is a genre close to my heart. I love making future bass tracks. To me, future bass is sort of sonically exciting, like a lot of the electronic genres like dubstep and trap, but perhaps a little bit more melodically driven. We hear a lot of jazzier harmonies in those songs, so it'll give me an opportunity to cover some chords that I did not cover in the last two music theory and action videos. All right, here we go. So I like writing chord progressions in just Logic's default instrument. Really, what I tell people is as long as you can hear the notes decently, I like to essentially write out a chord progression or something essentially to start my sound selection with. Find that easier. All right, so for future bass, I'm going to write this at 145 BPM. And then what key should we go in? Let's write something in major key. How about something like E? Well, should I do E major? Be a little bit more complicated. Let me show you how you would figure out your notes in E major if you're not familiar with your circle of fifths. If I put out my C major scale and then I move my C to an E, I can notice that all of a sudden I have 4 black keys. It'd be an F sharp, a G sharp, a C sharp, and a D sharp. If I were to build chords on top of that, I would essentially get my E major chord, skipping scale tones, my F sharp, moving a little slowly, all right, and so on. All right, so I know these chords, so follow along here. We could start with an E major chord. Let's choose a cool voicing for this. What about if we make that a 7th chord? Cool chord. I love major 7ths. All right, from there, how about we do something like a C sharp minor 7th? We already are on the C sharp and G sharp, so this is going to be somewhat of a common tone transition. A common tone chord progression is when one chord moves into the next and they share a note in common. That's always going to make for a smoother transition, and a lot of most famous chord progressions in popular music do something like that. All right, so see, a C sharp minor 7th are going to be C sharp, E, G sharp, and then a B. So we had the B down here, so we could keep that, but perhaps changing the voicing will give that note a little bit more shine. Let's hear this. So I moved the G sharp there down an octave because it sounded a little bit dense. Remember, a chord, the quality of a chord, or like the sound, we call it A major, C sharp minor 7th. That's from the combination of the notes. Where those notes are is up to our own compositional creativity. The difference would be referred to as the chord voicing, where the different notes are. We can even put another note besides the root note of the chord, in this case the C sharp, in the bass if we wanted a slightly different color of that chord. All right, let's keep it going. So for this, you can find a bass note you like. Let's see. Alright, I'm gonna go to a G sharp, so that's the third. It's gonna be a minor chord. Let's add that seventh in. Let's take cool. Followed by the dominant chord. This is a B major. Maybe add the seventh, or the dominant seventh. Cool. I like this chord progression. It's pretty slow, jazzy. Works pretty well for feature bass. All right. So from here, I'm gonna program some drums. In the interest of time, I'm gonna fly along here a little bit. All right, I'm gonna make an 8-bar sort of build up here. I'm all of a sudden having the idea that we could start this out with a build up and then come in pretty hard at 9 with our bass and perhaps the flutter synth of this chord progression. All right, so let's do a build up. Looking through my super disorganized sample packs, I'm gonna use my tried and true Savage drums. All right, so I'm gonna go to, let's see, I like the dry reverbs for the rolls. Give us some more complexity, I'm going to use a couple different samples for this. All right, so first we're going to make a little pattern. For a build-up, we could literally just do this sort of 4 on the floor type thing. Perhaps keep it on the same sample. Shorten these. All right. All right, so build-ups, we all know this sound if you listen to dance music, but it's all about the subdivision, the speeding up, drum effect. We can do some cool accenting, doubling up on some more important rhythms. Now, some of you might be thinking, "Oh, this sounds terrible." They're dry samples that we haven't mixed in. I'm going to show you some cool little mix tricks to make this blend a little bit more. So in there. All right, so from here, I'm gonna group these up together. I'm gonna create a track stack, summing stack, so I can just treat them as one essential thing. I'm gonna start with the low pass filter, just with my default EQ. Hopefully you can hear it in your head coming together. All right, so I covered in a Serum tutorial building a riser sound. I could even use that same riser if I can find it, 8-bar riser demo. I noticed, I don't know if it was a Serum update recently, but all of a sudden my all my presets in my user folder are completely like unorganized. If anybody knows or had the same issue, shoot me an email or a message. I would love to know why that happened if you know. All right, so for this, I'm gonna start with in the key. So we wrote this chord progression in E major. So I think using the MIDI key of an E for this buildup will work well. We're gonna hear it. All right, so it sounded like more like 4 bars. If I go into this, oh no, it is at, all right, 8 bar. All right, so now I'm gonna do the same sort of filtering effect on this riser. Quite dissonant. Let me grab another riser. This is what I mean. Build up 8 bar. No, that's more of my wobble. All right, so then I'm gonna bounce that in place. Since Serum doesn't give me the option to make my LFO last for 7 measures, and in this case I want it to last for 7, I'm gonna just speed it up, and then mute that channel. All right, cool. All right, get in there. Now here's for the future bass specific things. All right, so before I fully launch into my wobble synth, I like to do those patterns over drums. Kick. Go in and grab a snare. Choose some big reverb. All right, so just back to some music theory. In the rhythm chapter, I describe backbeats. Those are essentially our snare patterns. I'm going to use a halftime backbeat at 145. This is super common in the genre. Dance music is more, I think, rhythm specific than perhaps other genres of music, and my theory on that is because of the importance of the performance, or how these tracks are played. In other words, DJing. All right, I'm gonna do some syncopation there. That's what you call it when my second kick does not hit on the downbeat. It adds for some cool flavor to it. Add some ornamentation. Alright, I'm going to add a drum fill. I'm going to use East-West instruments. And enjoying these like heavy metal kicks or kits. That's what I mean. Alright, so the Ministry of Rock drums. Let's use a Ludwig kit. Alright. I'm gonna do these at the end of every four bar phrase. Alright, I'm gonna put those a little bit behind the beat. Give it a little bit more groove to it. Alright. We can get more specific with those fills at the end. All right, I'm gonna put in some cymbals. That kit, because it's a lot of trap type sounds. I'm not a huge fan of the cymbal stuff there. Let's see our future bass one shot cymbals. We can always use a placeholder. All right. Now let's talk about swing. Swing feels really good in music. It adds to the groove. I'm gonna add some swing here on our cymbals. I basically have every other cymbal selected, and I'm gonna put them slightly behind the beat. Not too much. Just gives it a little bit more, again, groove. All right, cool. So now I am going to program some cool little flutters in here. All right, I'm gonna duplicate Serum. put my chords down there, not hit play, because that's going to sound pretty bad. Let's see, did I save the Flutter demo? Cannot find it. All right, let's just build a Flutter. Let's go to initial preset. Again, this isn't going to sound too great to begin with, so bear with me. Instead of doing that with our LFO, perhaps automate that. All right, cool. Here comes the fun stuff. Our rhythm, I'm going to take it off BPM tie. All right, cool. So let's automate a little bit of that. I'm going to put it on. Before I do that, I'm going to save my file. Go to my Lacy. Now I'm going to put it on read or touch. You know what I mean? Here we go. Some cool stuff there. Put it on touch. I did again, saying the opposite stuff. Gives me some of my pattern, then I can go in here and edit it. All right, I think actually stumbled on a little motif here. I'm hearing between the flutter and the this drum fill, I'm hearing kind of like a rhythm. Drummer in my band, Carlson, shout out if you're watching, always used to criticize me when I would, or make fun of me when I would try to say the drum grooves. But I hear a quarter note, like, and then a syncopated thing happening where we're like one bum bum ba da da dun 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 ba da da. As silly as that is, if you can try to internalize or somehow get what's in your head out into something that you can hear and then try to bring out in the music, that helps a lot. I'm going to finish up the video today just writing a bass line. One of my favorite subs to work with, at least in the beginning while I'm just writing, is by Native Instruments, the Razor. There's a synth, there's a preset called Punch in the Balls that is got a really, really it's a big low punch like it sounds. You heard some of that. All right. Sorry, I was in the groove. Let me explain to you what I was thinking here when I wrote the bass line. First of all, our bass line's fundamentally following the chord progression. We don't really have to do this in drops, but I'm looking at this as more of like a verse, like a big melodic delivery section. So I am following the chord progression. That chord progression was an E major, 7th, but an E chord, a C sharp chord, a G sharp chord, and a B chord. So those are the main notes that I'm going to. Rhythm wise, my rhythm is following that motif that I was trying to tap out for you. The notes I'm using to fill in have something to do with the harmony that we're playing at the time. So for this fill right here, I go up to the G sharp inner chord, back down to E, name of our chord, down to the B, the 5th, and back up to the D sharp. I basically use the same rhythmic pattern the next time I do it, only I'm starting on the C sharp again because of the chord. I then do the same exact pattern from its notes. I go to the 3rd, down. So you don't have to get super specific about this, but a lot of times when you're singing melodies that you hear in your head together, we will find that they are pattern driven. I think it's part of what our brains are doing when we listen to music. But then because the flutter went to this like eighth note groove, I did steady eighth notes on my G sharp, and I did a fill, and finally returned to that same sort of motif. This note is slightly out of the chord more so, but since it's the end, I thought that kind of provided some cool dissonance because you're hearing the drum fills. But all right, let's go ahead and hear this from the beginning. I think this is a pretty good place to leave it. We got a little bit more drum writing, chord progression writing with seventh chords, and some bass writing. Let me just name these. All right, so hopefully this was helpful for you. Again, if you're curious about any of the chord stuff I'm referencing, it would be awesome if you were to get the book that is below. Sorry, starting to stutter my words. All right, so let's hear this from the beginning. Cool. I'm excited to keep working on this. This is just going to be part one of potentially many parts. My goal is to make this a track that I actually release in its entirety. I would also release the various presets that I built, and and the project file minus the samples that I do not have permission to share. All right, everybody. Hope this was helpful. Feel free to shoot me questions. Feel free to check out my music linked below or the textbook. And until next time, just signing off.